Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon and good evening based on the time you're watching this video. My name is Akash Bhunia. I'm a third year law student in South Calcutta Law College and you are watching Lawve. So today we're going to be discussing about the various classes of criminal courts. Today we'll be discussing about the various subordinate criminal courts, that is the criminal courts below the level of High Court, because High Court is a different ball game altogether. So we'll be discussing the powers and jurisdictions and functions of these courts according to the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. These are the various topics that we're going to be discussing today. A detailed subdivision and timestamps will be in the description box below, so feel free to skip around any particular point if you feel it necessary. All that being said, strap on, keep your notebooks handy, we are in for a ride. Let's begin. Okay, so firstly let us see all the types of different courts that a state needs to have in their territory, and then we'll come back and understand each of them in detail. Alright, so firstly, section 6 of the CRPC states that besides having a high court, each state shall have number 1, a court of sessions, number 2, judicial magistrate of the first class, and metropolitan magistrates for metropolitan areas. Do not get overwhelmed. We'll be coming back to all of these. We'll dissect each of these terms and we'll understand the shit out of it. Anyways, number 3, we have judicial magistrates of the second class, and number 4, we have the executive magistrates. Among these, the executive magistrates do not perform any judicial functions except in certain scenarios, so we'll be leaving them out in this lesson. But I may upload a video exclusively on the topic when an executive magistrate acts judicially and when not. So if you're interested in that topic, subscribe to this channel and keep your notifications on by pressing the bell button so you get updated whenever I upload that. Anyways, now let's come back and understand each of these types of court and their powers and jurisdictions separately. First up, we have the Court of Sessions. Alright, so according to section 7 of the CRPC, each state in this country is divided into many sessions. And mostly for the purpose of this act, each district is taken as one session. Now, the highest court for dealing with criminal cases in each session is called the Sessions Court. Mostly, the highest court of a district is called the District Court. And when the District Court deals with criminal cases, it is called a Sessions Court. When the District Court deals with civil cases, it's called the District Court. So the same court when dealing with criminal cases is named Sessions Court, and when dealing with civil cases is named District Court. A Sessions Court is presided over by a Sessions Judge. He's like the main judge of that particular court and is appointed by the High Court. The High Court also appoints additional Sessions Judges and Assistant Sessions Judges. They work under the supervision of the Sessions Judge. Now that analogy of boss, manager and employee is probably not the most accurate, keeping in mind the hierarchical structure of the Indian judiciary, but you do get the point, don't you? Now coming on to the powers of a Sessions Court. A Sessions Court has jurisdiction over any offence committed under the IPC and which is done within the territorial limits of that session or district. Section 26 of the CRPC also states that in case of a rape, preferably a woman justice should be presiding over that case in whatever court it is dealt with. Coming back to Sessions Court, a Sessions Judge and an additional Sessions Judge is free to pass any kind of sentence authorized by the law, including death sentence, but if it does so, it first must consult it with a High Court. So in case of delivering a death sentence, a Sessions Judge and an additional Sessions Judge has restriction in their power because they have to first consult with the High Court before passing that kind of sentence. As regards to any other kind of sentence, a Sessions Judge or an additional Sessions Judge is free to pass that. An Assistant Sessions Judge, though, possesses a little less power than his superiors. An Assistant Sessions Judge cannot pass a sentence of death, a sentence of life imprisonment, and a sentence for imprisonment for a term exceeding 10 years. Other than that, an Assistant Sessions Judge is free to pass any other sentence authorized by law. So you can understand that the case for an offence for which the punishment can be imprisonment exceeding terms of 10 years or life imprisonment or sentence of death is not tried in the court of an Assistant Sessions Judge in the first place. Okay, so that was more or less about the powers, functions and jurisdictions of the Sessions Court. Next up, we have the courts of judicial magistrates. Judicial magistrates are subordinate to the Sessions Judge, that is, in the hierarchical position, they are below the judges of the Sessions Court. In itself, they are again divided into Chief Judicial Magistrate, Judicial Magistrate of the first class, and Judicial Magistrate of the second class. Their hierarchical position is in the order as I said them. Section 11 of the CRPC empowers the state government to set up as many as courts of the Judicial Magistrate of first class and Judicial Magistrate of second class as they may think fit with consultation of the High Court. So you can understand that there is no fixed number of courts of Judicial Magistrate that can be set up. It entirely depends on the state government how many they want to set up, but obviously they need to consult with the High Court in the first place. When a court of Judicial Magistrate is set up, it automatically becomes subordinate to the Sessions Court or the District Court in whose territorial jurisdiction it is set up. So just for example, if a court of Judicial Magistrate is set up in Barakpur, it will automatically be subordinate to the District and Sessions Court of Barashat. And for those who don't know these places, what's wrong with you? Anyways, one of the judicial magistrates is selected as the Chief Judicial Magistrate or the CJM. All the other judicial magistrates are subordinate to him in the hierarchy. Sometimes an additional Chief Judicial Magistrate can also be appointed and he will be subordinate to the CJM, but he will exercise similar powers as to the CJM. Which brings us to the point, what exactly are the powers and jurisdiction of a court of judicial magistrate? The list you're seeing beside me right now is called the first schedule of the CRPC. This list basically contains which offense is to be tried by which court. It's a very long list. Just try and go through it. You should find it in the back of your CRPC Bail Act. Just for example, now see, rioting here can be tried by a court of any class of judicial magistrate, whereas rioting by armed weapons is only triable in a court of a first class magistrate. So a court of judicial magistrate will have jurisdiction over an offense if it has occurred within the territorial limits of that court and that offense is of a nature which by the first schedule of the CRPC has been made triable by that particular court. So for example, again, if incidents of rioting by armed weapons has happened in a particular area, that incident will not be triable in a court of a judicial magistrate of the second class, even if it falls within the territorial limit of that particular court. It can only be tried in a court of judicial magistrate of the first class. But if an incident of riot has occurred, it can be tried in the court of the judicial magistrate of any class if it falls within his or her territorial limits. Okay, now let's talk about the power of passing sentences. Remember that the judicial magistrates are subordinate to the judges of the Sessions Court. Also remember that an assistant sessions judge, the least powerful of the judges of a Sessions Court, could not pass a sentence for imprisonment exceeding a term of 10 years. So the most powerful judicial magistrate, which is the CJM, he should be a little less powerful than that guy. So CJM could not pass a sentence for an imprisonment exceeding a term of 7 years. So other than a death sentence, a sentence for life imprisonment and a sentence of imprisonment exceeding a term of 7 years, a CJM is allowed to pass any other sentence authorized by law. Of course, an additional Chief Judicial Magistrate is allowed to do the same because they have similar powers, as I have already told you. Coming to Judicial Magistrate of the first class, he is not allowed to pass any sentence of imprisonment exceeding a term of 3 years and is not allowed to impose a fine exceeding the monetary value of 10,000 rupees. And the Judicial Magistrate of the second class is not allowed to pass any sentence of imprisonment exceeding a term of 1 year and is not allowed to impose any monetary fine exceeding the value of 5,000 rupees. Now this is done to efficiently distribute the workload. You'd want your most specialized and most experienced guys or most experienced judges to be judging the more serious matters, and the less experienced and the less specialized judges to judge the petty matters until they get more specialized, until they get more experienced. Other than that, what would happen? Your new guy who has just joined the force, maybe he will be trying a case of murder, and that very experienced guy with lot of sensibilities and a lot of specialization, he will be dealing a case of theft. To avoid that from happening, to prevent that from happening, this division of class is done so that the workload is distributed more efficiently. Cool? Now if I ask you if everything is clear, would you say
crystal?
I hope so. Okay, so since we're talking about better distribution of workload, this last concept that we're going to understand is a brilliant example of that, the concept of Metropolitan Magistrates. A metropolitan area is an area comprising of a city or a town, the population of which exceeds 1 million, or as YouTube nowadays says, 10 lakhs. So in those metropolitan areas, the High Court sets up the courts of Metropolitan Magistrates. And one of those Metropolitan Magistrates is appointed as the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate. The powers, functions and jurisdictions of a Chief Metropolitan Magistrate is equal to that of the CJM, and the power, function and jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Magistrates is equal to that of the Judicial Magistrates of first class. Now again, this division is done to better distribute the workload. You can understand that in these metropolitan areas, the workload can be immensely high than other areas of the state because of the high population density. Now you'd want your judicial officers working in those areas to be specialized in dealing with such immense pressure and working under such immense pressurized conditions. And hence this division of special class of magistrate is done for these areas. So that's about it. For a quick recap, we saw that the different classifications of subordinate criminal courts in the state include the Court of Sessions, the Court of the CJM or the Chief Judicial Magistrate and the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate, the Court of Judicial Magistrate of first class and the Metropolitan Magistrates, and the Court of Judicial Magistrates of the second class. After understanding the concept of each one of them, we also saw the hierarchical position they belong in. After that, we saw the various jurisdictions and the power of passing sentence by each of these courts. If at any place I have not verbally mentioned any sections, it has surely been displayed in the side. I hope you took note of it. And if you still have doubts regarding any of this topic, feel free to shoot them in the comment. I will try my best to answer that. One final request, if you like the videos I am making here, do follow me on the various social media handles that I will be linking below. I post a lot of knowledge there as well. Also check out the various playlists in this channel and see if you find a favorite one. Until next time guys, ta-da.